Morning,
sir.
sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all of you. So, hope all of you are fine. So, a few participants didn't join. Anyway, so we will start our session from the previous one. As my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will what we said yesterday, that we will start from the video itself, how the electrocardiogram, the introduction to the electrocardiogram, how it is recorded. We will start the video now.
Sir, it is not audible.
All of you is same.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you should have told earlier. Anyway, I'm again starting the video.
The cardiac cycle refers to the sequence
Is
of
it okay
events
now?
that occur and repeat
Yes,
with
sir.
every heartbeat.
Yes, Yes, sir. sir.
It can be divided into two major phases, systole and diastole, each of which subdivides into several smaller phases. Systole and diastole, when not specified otherwise, refer to ventricular contraction and relaxation, respectively. Reminders: blood flows from
Sorry.
The cardiac cycle refers to the sequence of events that occur and repeat with every heartbeat. It can be divided into two major phases, systole and diastole, each of which subdivides into several smaller phases. Systole and diastole, when not specified otherwise, refer to ventricular contraction and relaxation, respectively. Reminders: blood flows from higher to lower pressure. Contraction increases the pressure within a chamber, while relaxation lowers the pressure. AV valves open when atrial pressures are higher than ventricular pressures and close when the pressure gradient is reversed. Similarly, semilunar valves open when ventricular pressures are higher than aortic pulmonary pressures and close when the reverse is true. The cycle is initiated with the firing of the SA node that stimulates the atria to depolarize. This is represented by the P wave on the ECG. Atrial contraction starts shortly after the P wave begins and causes the pressure within the atria to increase, forcing blood into the ventricles. Atrial contraction, however, only accounts for a fraction of ventricular filling because at this point the ventricles are already almost full due to passive blood flow down the ventricles through the open AV valves. As atrial contraction completes, atrial pressure begins to fall, reversing the pressure gradient across the AV valves, causing them to close. The closing of the AV valves produces the first heart sound, S1, and marks the beginning of systole. At this point, ventricular depolarization, represented by the QRS complex, is halfway through, and the ventricles start to contract, rapidly building up pressures inside the ventricles. For a moment, however, the semilunar valves remain closed, and the ventricles contract within a closed space. This phase is referred to as isovolumetric contraction because no blood is ejected and ventricular volume is unchanged. Ventricular ejection starts when ventricular pressures exceed the pressures within the aorta and pulmonary artery. The aortic and pulmonic valves open and blood is ejected out of the ventricles. This is the rapid ejection phase. As ventricular repolarization, reflected by the T wave, begins, ventricular pressure starts to fall and the force of ejection is reduced. When ventricular pressures drop below aortic and pulmonary pressures, the semilunar valves close, marking the end of systole and beginning of diastole. Closure of semilunar valves produces the second heart sound, S2. The first part of diastole is, again, isovolumetric, as the ventricles relax with all valves closed. Ventricular pressure drops rapidly, but their volumes remain unchanged. Meanwhile, the atria are being filled with blood and atrial pressures rise slowly. Ventricular filling starts when ventricular pressures drop below atrial pressures, causing the AV valve to open, allowing blood to flow down the ventricles passively. The atria contract to finish the filling phase, and the cycle repeats itself.
Okay, so
Thank you for watching.
So it is clear, probably. Do you have any questions on this? Okay, so we will go forward. This was the when it was discussed yesterday that including heart, every human organ has some electric potential. When it is unstimulated in its normal position, it is called the resting potential. When an external stimulus is given to the cell, then the cell is excited and its potential got changed. And this is called then the potential is called action potential. So when the cell is resting, it was taught in the first module that when a cell is resting, then its potential is minimum. And when some stimulus is given, then it is in the action potential, its potential got varied. So similarly, in case of heart, the action potential and resting potentials are there. So while varying their action potential and resting potential, the following things occurs.
The heart is essentially a muscle that contracts and pumps blood.
Just a minute, someone is waiting in the waiting room. Yeah.
It consists of specialized muscle cells called cardiac myocytes. The contraction of these cells is initiated by electrical impulses known as action potentials. Unlike skeletal muscles, which have to be stimulated by the nervous system, the heart generates its own electrical stimulation. In fact, a heart can keep on beating even when taken out of the body. The nervous system can make the heartbeats go faster or slower, but cannot generate them. The impulses start from a small group of myocytes called the pacemaker cells, which constitute the cardiac conduction system. These are modified myocytes that lose the ability to contract and become specialized for initiating and conducting action potentials. The SA node is the primary pacemaker of the heart. It initiates all heartbeats and controls heart rate. If the SA node is damaged, other parts of the conduction system may take over this role. The cells of the SA node fire spontaneously, generating action potentials that spread through the contractile myocytes of the atria. The myocytes are connected by gap junctions, which form channels that allow ions to flow from one cell to another. This enables electrical coupling of neighboring cells. An action potential in one cell triggers another action potential in its neighbor, and the signals propagate rapidly. The impulses reach the AV node, slow down a little to allow the atria to contract, then follow the conduction pathway and spread through the ventricular myocytes. Action potential generation and conduction are essential for all myocytes to act in synchrony. Pacemaker cells and contractile myocytes exhibit different forms of action potentials. Cells are polarized, meaning there is an electrical voltage across the cell membrane. In a resting cell, the membrane voltage, known as the resting membrane potential, is usually negative. This means the cell is more negative on the inside. At this resting state, there are concentration gradients of several ions across the cell membrane, more sodium and calcium outside the cell, and more potassium inside the cell. These gradients are maintained by several pumps that bring sodium and calcium out and potassium in. An action potential is essentially a brief reversal of electric polarity of the cell membrane and is produced by voltage-gated ion channels. These channels are passageways for ions in and out of the cell, and as their names suggest, are regulated by membrane voltage. They open at some values of membrane potential and close at others. When membrane voltage increases and becomes less negative, the cell is less polarized and is said to be depolarized. Reversely, when membrane potential becomes more negative, the cell is repolarized. For an action potential to be generated, the membrane voltage must depolarize to a critical value called the threshold. The pacemaker cells of the SA node spontaneously fire about 80 action potentials per minute, each of which sets off a heartbeat, resulting in an average heart rate of 80 beats per minute. Pacemaker cells do not have a true resting potential. The voltage starts at about -60 millivolts and spontaneously moves upward until it reaches the threshold of -40 millivolts. This is due to action of so-called funny currents, present only in pacemaker cells. Funny channels open when membrane voltage becomes lower than -40 millivolts and allow slow influx of sodium. The resulting depolarization is known as pacemaker potential. At threshold, calcium channels open, calcium ions flow into the cell, further depolarizing the membrane. This results in the rising phase of the action potential. At the peak of depolarization, potassium channels open, calcium channels inactivate, potassium ions leave the cell, and the voltage returns to -60 millivolts. This corresponds to the falling phase of the action potential. The original ionic gradients are restored thanks to several ionic pumps, and the cycle starts over. Electrical impulses from the SA node spread through the conduction system and to the contractile myocytes. These myocytes have a different set of ion channels. In addition, their sarcoplasmic reticulum, the SR, stores a large amount of calcium. They also contain myofibrils. Contractile cells have a stable resting potential of -90 millivolts and depolarize only when stimulated, usually by a neighboring myocyte. When a cell is depolarized, it has more sodium and calcium inside the cell. These positive ions leak through the gap junctions to the adjacent cell and bring the membrane voltage of this cell up to the threshold of -70 millivolts. At threshold, fast sodium channels open, creating a rapid sodium influx and a sharp rise in voltage. This is the depolarizing phase. L-type or slow calcium channels also open at -40 millivolts, causing a slow but steady influx. As the action potential nears its peak, sodium channels close quickly, voltage-gated potassium channels open, and these result in a small decrease in membrane potential, known as early repolarization phase. The calcium channels, however, remain open, and the potassium efflux is eventually balanced by the calcium influx. This keeps the membrane potential relatively stable for about 200 milliseconds, resulting in the plateau phase, characteristic of cardiac action potentials. Calcium is crucial in coupling electrical excitation to physical muscle contraction. The influx of calcium from the extracellular fluid, however, is not enough to induce contraction. Instead, it triggers a much greater calcium release from the SR in a process known as calcium-induced calcium release. Calcium then sets off muscle contraction by the same sliding filament mechanism described for skeletal muscle. The contraction starts about halfway through the plateau phase and lasts till the end of this phase. As calcium channels slowly close, potassium efflux predominates and membrane voltage returns to its resting value. Calcium is actively transported out of the cell and also back to the SR. The sodium-potassium pump then restores the ionic balance across the membrane. Because of the plateau phase, cardiac muscle stays contracted longer than skeletal muscle. This is necessary for expulsion of blood from the heart chambers. The absolute refractory period is also much longer, 250 milliseconds compared to 1 millisecond in skeletal muscle. This long refractory period is to make sure the muscle has relaxed before it can respond to a new stimulus, and is essential in preventing summation and tetanus, which would stop the heart from beating. Thank you for watching. Please feel.
So here we can understand that some whatever discussed in the yesterday's class, that there are some nervous activity in the heart. So what are they? That is SA node, which are generating some pulses. As it was told in the video, that for each minute the heart produces, not the heart, that AV node, SA node produces 80 beats, 80 pulses to the heart. So that are the heartbeats. We usually said it beats per minute. So it is this beating of heart, this was originated from the SA node. Now it was repeatedly said that this SA node is a pacemaker. So perhaps many of you are aware about the pacemaker surgery of heart. So what is the disability occurs in the heart, so that the patient have to do for pacemaker surgery. If the SA node does not beats properly, does not generates the pulse properly, then what will happen? Then it will not pump the blood out of the heart. So the other organs may face some issues regarding the oxygen concentration. So every other organs cannot get some oxygen. So what will happen? The total body will fall down. Total human body will fall down. So after that, what needs to be done? Then this SA node function should be restored. That means some external pulses should be given to the heart to run all the functions of the heart smoothly. So in that case, we need to install an external pacemaker or external pulse generator. Now, what is pacemaker? You know that whoever plays cricket or knows cricket, then pace means a speed. Okay, so any speed. There is, in cricket language, it is medium pace, a fast pace. So this is, the pace is regarding the speed. It means speed. So in pacemakers, though these pacemakers, what is that function? The pacemaker generates some
Hello.
pulse in a single pace. Yeah, please wait. I'll come to you. Please turn off your microphone. I'll come. So
Okay, sir.
here this pacemaker generates. So what I mean, inside the pacemaker, what is there? A battery will be there and a pulse generator will be there. So it will generate a continuous pulse so that the heart can operate in its normal way. When the SA node is not functioning properly, then it will not, I mean, the heart will not beat properly. It will not be able to pump the blood out of the body, I mean, throughout the body properly. So it is called arrhythmia. Okay. When the rhythm of the heart is disturbed. Okay. So in that way, this SA node acts, and if the SA node is not active, then I mean it is not functioning properly, then external pacemaker should be installed in a human body to properly function the heart. Okay, so we will take the question in the chat. Yeah, Shruti, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you, Gaurav, and Subhasini, these three people.
Subhashini. Yes, sir.
Subhasini.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
these three people, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, you may
Thank you,
go
sir.
ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anyone wants to say something? Ashish Mahato. Okay.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर.
Yeah, good morning.
सर जैसे इसमें बोले कि जो सब सेल होता है उसमें एक पोटेंशियल होता है, तो वो पोटेंशियल जो होता है सर, मतलब जैसे कि नॉर्मल पर्सन और एक एबनॉर्मल पर्सन जो है, तो वो पोटेंशियल तो डिफर करेगा. आई मीन मे
एकदम
बी
करेगा.
किसी में ज्यादा होगा, किसी में कम.
एकदम. अब
हाँ
क्वेश्चन
सर, वही
तुम्हारा,
क्वेश्चन.
हाँ क्वेश्चन अभी जो मतलब इसको लेके ही हम और एक कुछ ऐड करना चाह रहे हैं कि जैसे कि तुम बोले कि
अच्छा.
मानो कि ए और बी दो पर्सन है. ए इज फिजिकली
हाँ सर.
फिट एंड बी इज फिजिकली अनफिट.
हाँ.
सो तुम्हारा क्वेश्चन हुआ ये कि ए का जो हार्ट फंक्शन है और बी का जो हार्ट फंक्शन है, ये दोनों सेम होगा कि नहीं,
हाँ सर.
ये
हाँ सर.
क्वेश्चन है. हाँ ना, ऑब्वियसली तुम्हारे
हाँ सर.
क्वेश्चन के अंदर ही आंसर है कि ऑब्वियसली ये प्रॉपरली मतलब दोनों का इक्वल फंक्शन नहीं होगा. ठीक है. जैसे कि एक सिंपल एक मतलब क्या बोले, एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल जो अगर बताते हैं कि तुम ग्राउंड पे खेल रहे हो और कोई खेल रहा है, तुम देख रहे हो. ठीक है. तो ये दोनों के बीच में तुम्हारा हार्ट बीट का चेंजेस होगा, क्योंकि वहां पे तुम फिजिकली बहुत एक्टिव हो, लेकिन यहाँ पे मेंटली बहुत एक्टिव हो, फिजिकली नहीं. सो इस टाइम पे मतलब जब तुम ग्राउंड पे खेल रहे हो या कुछ फिजिकल एक्टिविटी कर रहे हो, तभी तुम्हारा हार्ट बीट जो है वो ज्यादा रहेगा, नॉर्मल टाइम में कम रहेगा,
फास्ट रहेगा.
फास्ट रहेगा. ठीक है. तो मतलब वो जो फास्ट रहने का जो बात है, क्या हो रहा है, जब भी कोई आदमी काम करने के लिए जाता है या कुछ फिजिकल एक्टिविटी करता है, एवरी ऑर्गन्स रिलेटेड टू दिस एक्टिविटी, दैट पर्टिकुलर एक्टिविटी नीड सम ऑक्सीजन, क्योंकि ऑक्सीजन हम लोगों का सेल्स जो है उसमें सबसे ज्यादा, उसको सेल को सांस लेने के लिए ये ऑक्सीजन चाहिए होता है. कोई भी काम हम लोग करने जाते हैं, देन वी नीड द ऑक्सीजन. तो ये ज्यादा ऑक्सीजन मिलने के लिए हम लोग को क्या करना होगा, ज्यादा ब्लड चाहिए. हम लोग तेज सांस लेते हैं, जब ज्यादा काम करते हैं तब तेज सांस लेते हैं, तेज सांस छोड़ते हैं. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ, वी इनहेल एंड एक्सेल इन ए बेटर रेट देन द रेस्टिंग वन. ठीक है. तो अभी जो बात है कि कोई अगर मतलब फिजिकली अनफिट है रिगार्डिंग द हार्ट, तो उसका ये जो फंक्शन है, ये फंक्शन चेंज हो जाएगा. चेंज हो जाएगा मतलब जो PQRST जो वहां पे फर्स्ट वीडियो में, आज का जो फर्स्ट वीडियो था उसमें जो बोला गया था that if the PQRST there is a timing gaps from P to Q, Q to R, R to S, S to T. So for a physically fit person, this will be the standard. There is a standard. When this standard varies person to person, then that person is called, some diseases are there, some disabilities are there, some problems are there in the heart functions. Okay. Okay, so any question?
ओके सर। तो सर समटाइम्स ऐसा भी होता है ना कि जैसे जैसे कि समटाइम्स ऐसा भी होता है कि सर रेस्टिंग मोड में है, तो कुछ अनएक्सपेक्टेड चीज सडनली अगर कुछ आ जाता है तो उस टाइम भी सर हार्ट बीट जो है मतलब स्पीडली ये हो जाता है, तो उस
हाँ।
टाइम भी मतलब वो नॉर्मल रहता है या फिर?
ना 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 ना, नॉर्मल कैसे रहेगा? कोई भी, तुम जैसे सोने के टाइम पे जो हम लोग का हार्ट बीट रहता है दैट इज मिनिमम। जब हम लोग सोते हैं, नींद में रहते हैं, द हार्ट बीट इज मिनिमम। ठीक है, तो अगर तुम सोते सोते कुछ सपना देख रहे हो, नींद टूट गया, देन यू कैन फील के हार्ट बीट बढ़ गया है।
हाँ।
ठीक है, तो मतलब क्या
बढ़
हुआ?
जाता है।
हाँ, मतलब क्या हुआ, तुम्हारा जो ब्रेन सेल्स है, इट नीड्स सम ऑक्सीजन, इट नीड्स सम एक्स्ट्रा ब्लड। दैट वो कहां से आएगा? वो हार्ट ज्यादा पंप करेगा तब जाके आएगा, है ना?
हाँ हाँ सर।
अच्छा, आया समझ में? और कुछ क्वेश्चंस?
नो थैंक यू सर।
Okay, so we will go to the introduction of the electrocardiography. As it was told yesterday, this was discussed yesterday also, that this device is used to measure the heart functions, and obviously this record is called the electrocardiograph, and the process is called electrocardiography. And probably this PQRST curve that has been discussed in the first video, today's first video, you can see the P waves that denotes the arterial depolarization. That means before the P waves, you can see this part is for the resting potential. Resting potential means the heart is not doing any activity. Okay, so it is in the resting potential. So when it starts the activity, the heart starts the activity, then what happens? Whoever have some questions, you can raise your hand. I'll address you a little bit later. By the time you can give your attendance in the chat box. So in the P wave, this denotes the arterial depolarization. That means the arteria got depolarized. From resting potential, it has some action potential. Okay, that is, what is the arterial depolarization? That electrical signal is directed from the sinoatricular SA node towards AV node. SA node starts the pulse and AV nodes conducts to the wall of the ventricles, right ventricle and left ventricle, both. Now QRS complex, that means QRS complex means this part, this QRS, okay, this triangular kind of thing. Now this denotes the depolarization of ventricles as well as repolarization of atrium. That means when the blood comes to the arteria, one side in the left part, the fresh blood, that oxygenated blood comes from the lung, and in the right arteria, the deoxygenated blood from all over the body comes to the right arteria. So here you can, in that time, SA node passes the pulses to the AV node. Okay, now this AV node conducts the pulse throughout the ventricle. So the ventricle got polarized. Okay, now this ventricular depolarization causes the arterial repolarization. That means the arteria got back to the resting potential. Okay. Now, this T wave denotes the repolarization of the ventricles. Okay. Now, repolarization of ventricles means the ventricles got depolarized by the pulse received by the AV node from the SA node. These ventricles are pumped, ventricles are used for the pumping of the blood to the body and to the lung. So the interval from the beginning of this QRS wave, complex wave, to the T wave is referred to the absolute refractory period. You can see absolute refractory period. The last half of the T wave is referred to as the relative refractory period. That means from QRS complex that ends here, from here to the apex, that means the peak of this T wave, is called the absolute refractory period. The last half of the T wave, that means from here to here, is called the relative refractory period. So in the if we summarize this diagram, then you can clearly depict that this PR interval, that is the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS complex, that is the PR interval. You can see that is denoted by this dark yellow color. This ST segment, this is connects the QRS complex and the T wave. This is the ST segment that is marked as purple. And the QT interval, this is the beginning of the QRS complex to the end of the T curve, that is denoted by the blue color. Okay. So do you have any questions? You can ask. Okay, Gautam Kumar Singh. Okay. Gautam Kumar?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
सर इससे पहले सर जो पेसमेकर में हम लोगों ने रीडिंग पोटेंशियल को नॉर्मल करने के लिए पेसमेकर
Gautam, I think your voice is not clear. Do you have any headphones kind of thing? I mean, whichever you can use in your mobile phone, you can connect it, or you can write your question to the chat box.
Yes.
Yeah, anyone having some questions, they can ask. So no questions received till now. So probably Gautam is typing to ask the question. So we will wait for that. And another thing, I have uploaded the video in the Google Classroom, the first video, today's first video. I will share the next videos, whichever discussed till today in the Google Classroom. You can clearly, figure out, you can watch the videos many times to better understand the electrical conductivity and the electrical activities of the heart functions. Okay, we have got the question from Gautam Kumar Singh. For make two ideal persons same heart rhythm, if they are physically fit, there is no need to use the pacemaker because the SA node is acting fine. If the person is having some difficulty in pace generation from the SA node, then he or she needs to undergo a surgery of pacemaker. Other than this, we don't need to use the pacemaker. Okay, thank you, Gautam. So you can go through the Google Classroom, and this week, by the end of this week, I will post an assignment. This will have 10 questions, but I will give some relaxation too, because the deadline will be a little bit later. So there is no pressure on you. You will get enough time, and the questions will be in the short answer type, so you need not to write a long answer type question. Okay. Okay, for today. Goodbye, thank you, enjoy your day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.